call the April 22nd POSAC committee meeting to order. First item of business is roll call. Tony Lewis.
Here.
Janet George.
Here.
Ann Oberchain.
Here.
Heather Williams. Jen Archuleta.
Here.
Paula Fitzgerald.
I'm here.
Trace Baker.
Here.
Stephen Myrick.
Here.
Jim Krug here. Next item of business is approval of the March 25th, 2021 meeting minutes. Chair will entertain a motion.
Ann Obenchain, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Trace Baker, second.
Is there any discussion, edits, changes? None being made at this time. It goes for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Let the record show the minutes are approved. Next item of business is the presentations this evening. We have one action, well, two action items, I guess, and three, sorry. And we'll start with the Elk Management update. And Teresa, Ms. Glowacki is with us. And are you going to present?
Yes, I am.
All righty, have at it when you're ready to go, please.
Thank you, everyone. I am Teresa Glowacki, and I'm the manager of the Resource Management Division for Parks and Open Space. And I am not alone in this work that we're going to present on today. And I'd like to start by introducing some of the other team members. So with Parks and Open Space, we have Dave Horath and Susan Spalding. Dave is our large mammal wildlife biologist, and Susan is the senior wildlife specialist. And then we have three people on the call from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. This is definitely a very collaborative effort. We have Ben Gallowich, who is the district wildlife manager for the north section, which includes Ron Stewart Preserve at Rabbit Mountain. We have Joe Padilla, who covers the central part of Boulder County, which includes the Red Hill. And then we also have Shannon Schaller, who's Shannon is their supervisors. So we'll let those three answer any questions that you might have about the Colorado Parks and Wildlife side of things. So I am going to start with our land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of healing and education, Boulder County Parks and Open Space acknowledges all of the contemporary American Indian tribes with ancestral lineage in the state of Colorado, which includes the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute people, whose traditional homelands include Boulder County at the period when the non-natives invaded and seized their land for their own benefit. We recognized all the indigenous peoples that came before non-natives as the original inhabitants of the land, and the attempted erasure of those people and their culture by the government our department represents. Parks and Open Space appreciates the thriving and diverse indigenous communities in Boulder County today and acknowledges our need to build stronger relationships with local indigenous people and tribal governments in order to promote their legacy of occupation on the lands our department is charged with managing on behalf of the residents of Boulder County. And then secondly, I would like to say Happy Earth Day. The first Earth Day was 51 years ago, and it's appropriate that here we are with Boulder County Parks and Open Space doing our best to manage the earth and the lands in Boulder County on this Earth Day. So I'm going to tell you about both elk management plans that we're working on. So first of all, the elk and vegetation management plan for Ron Stewart Preserve at Rabbit Mountain was approved in 2017, and the first approval was good for 3 years. So when we were bringing that back to POSAC and the county commissioners after our first 3 years, we had a second plan because we had more elk in a different area of the county. So we brought two plans back to you in 2020, and they were both approved, both POSAC and the county commissioners. And The commissioners approved the Ron Stewart Preserve at Rabbit Mountain Elk and Vegetation Management Plan for 3 more years, and then the Red Hill Elk Management Plan for 2 years, since it was the first time that we had been doing management on that herd. So this is your annual update on both of those. So I'm going to start with elk at Ron Stewart Preserve. And this is a lovely picture. It's an aerial shot looking west. You see Long's Peak in the background. This is above Rabbit Mountain, and you can see the elk in the foreground. The elk like to hang out in the trees on Rabbit Mountain, on Ron Stewart Preserve right there. So they got pretty comfortable there a while ago, which is why we had to look at elk management. So way back in the 80s and 90s, we almost didn't have, this is a refresher for those of you that might not remember everything. And I know we have at least one new POSAC member. So I'm going to give a brief summary of how we got where we are. So we used to not have any elk at Ron Stewart Preserve. And you see a few blips, 1997, then dipping again. And then in 2010, 11, 12, we started seeing the numbers grow. And even into 2015 and 16, you see the exponential growth. And working with CPW, they projected that our high count of 365 elk was going to double and go up to over 600 in 2017. So we had too many elk for the carrying capacity of that land. And it started to show in our vegetation. What you want to see on Mountain Mahogany is long leaders, like the photo on the right. But when you have too many elk and they're over browsing in the area, you get clubbed shrubs like this. So it's not good for the vegetation. And we were especially concerned in the Rabbit Mountain area because a Colorado Natural Heritage Program assessment of biodiversity in Boulder County ranked Rabbit Mountain as a B1, outstanding biodiversity significance. That's the pink on the map here. You can see the second one is the Red Hill, just south of Lyons. So we were very concerned with the impacts the elk were having on our biodiversity. And it wasn't just us in Parks and Open Space. The farmers around Rabbit Mountain were also seeing impacts. And what was happening is the elk had the refuge of Rabbit Mountain during the day where they couldn't be hunted. And then at night, as soon as the sun went down, they would head off the mountain out into the agricultural fields that surround Ron Stewart Preserve. And they started doing significant damage. And CPW was tracking that damage and working with the farmers and trying to mitigate it. But the problem with 365 elk was it was getting worse. And this is what it looks like. You see Rabbit Mountain in the background and the elk down on the private property. They ruined fences, they ate shrubs. There were a lot of neighbors' complaints. And we also had the elk collared when we started seeing the numbers going up. And so this is data from 4 different elk collars, but what it really shows is, and it's not just one elk this represents, because they were moving in large groups. So one collar could represent, tens of elk. And what you see is they really were surrounding Rabbit Mountain. They had their hot spot right in the middle, kind of central southern Rabbit Mountain. And then they would go out to the cornfields, down to the south and east, and up to the north and east, and headed over to Indian Mountain. So this indicated to us that they were too comfortable on Ron Stewart Preserve, and they weren't migrating. Their whole range was pretty much within our open space in the adjacent areas. So the goal of our elk and vegetation management plan is to reduce the resource impacts, reestablish migration, reduce the long-term population to 30 to 70. So we set our goal at 30 if they are on the property all year round, so non-migrating, and 70 if they are coming seasonally, if they return migrating to the high country and just come back in the winter. And then we also wanted to reduce the private land impacts. So we worked with CPW, and the way they manage elk herd numbers is they use the GMU, the Game Management Unit. So The Game Management Unit 20 encompasses the Ron Stewart Preserve at Rabbit Mountain. And so any hunters have to have a tag, a hunting tag for GMU 20. And then CPW drew a subunit in the middle, which really encompasses the Ron Stewart Preserve and then goes east out to 287 and west, a mile and a half or so west of Rabbit Mountain. So as I mentioned, the first plan was approved for 3 years, and then in 2020, the plan with no significant modifications was approved for 3 more years. So we're at the end of our 4th year of management. So in 2020, we carried things out much like we have the first 4 years. The hunters that had a tag for Game Management Unit 20, if they were interested in the chance of hunting on Ron Stewart Preserve, they gave us their name and we did a random drawing. Once we had the hunters selected, they had to pass a proficiency test, and that's all run by CPW. They were assigned a week to hunt. We closed the park on Monday through Wednesday, which are our least busy days at Ron Stewart Preserve. So we were inconveniencing the fewest recreation people. When Thursday through Sunday come around, Ron Stewart Preserve is back open, our trails are open, and the hunters can continue to hunt on a couple of properties adjacent that are closed to the public, like Indian Mountain to the west and the Cushman property to the east. The hunt ran from September 17th through January 31st. The hunters checked in with Parks and Open Space. They had to report any harvests. So we had a total of 50 hunters participate in this management. And of those 50, 19 harvested elk. And that is a 38% success rate. And CPW will tell you that average hunting success is more in the range of 25%. So hunters are still able to actually harvest an elk. And then the total from the whole subunit was 70. So this shows the progression of after the 4 years of the harvest. So the first year it was 25, went up to 31, back down to 27, and this year it's 19. So you can see a decrease, yet they are still harvesting. And in addition to just taking an elk, they make the elk move. That's part of the goal, is to get the elk so that they are not comfortable hanging out all day long on Ron Stewart Preserve and going to the neighbors at night. So this graph shows our counts. So how we are keeping track to see if we are on target to reach our goal is we do winter counts. We actually do summer counts as well, but we want to know how many elk are out on the property in February, March, and April. So this year's high count was 81 animals. So you see this was the graph from, say, 2011 up to the high of 2016 when we had the 360 animals. After the first year, it went down to 260. After the second year, it was like 145. You can see down here, it's like 125, and now it's at 81. So we are definitely moving the herd numbers in the right direction. So that's all very good news. This also shows the herd's home range. So when we started, remember I said they were just really stationary around Ron Stewart Preserve. Their home range was less than 15 square miles. And now in 2019, it got up to over 30. So we doubled their home range, and it was about the same after this past year. And this just depicts it in a different way. The yellow was their home range before we did any elk management. And then as it gets progressively lighter, you can see we're going through different years, 2016, 17, all the way through 2019, 20 data. So they're moving north and west. That's the direction we want them to go. Unfortunately, they're also moving a little south and east, which brings us to the one change that we are going to request this year. So this is the map of Ron Stewart Preserve here. This is Indian Mountain. So all of these properties are part of our elk management. This is the Cushman property that also is part of our elk management. So this is where they can hunt Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The rest of the week when when Ron Stewart Preserve is closed, they can hunt over here and over here. Well, as the elk are moving both to the west and to the east, they're starting to get these properties over here. And there are tenants, parks and open space tenants on the Darby and there's a couple of other properties right in that area. And they're doing damage, just like they're doing damage to the neighbors right adjacent to Ron Stewart Preserve. And in this management plan, since when we started, they weren't out on these properties, our tenant leased properties. We didn't include in the plan any ability to use lethal hazing on those properties. We did on the Red Hill, and I'll show you some pictures of that. But so our request this year is to modify our plan slightly to allow us to use our certified hunters to address the elk issues on our tenant properties. So if the elk come down here and just hang out on the properties here and they're eating the vegetables, the tenant's vegetables and that sort of thing, they can call our hunt coordinator and our wildlife biologist, and we can work with our certified hunters to go out and try and hunt them on those properties. We are also continuing our monitoring of the elk. This is a helicopter that CPW rented to put more collars on elk in Boulder County in general. We've had collars. Typically, we have about 4. We're down up there now. Some of the collars have died. So we're continuing to work with CPW to assure that we've got enough collars on both of these herds so we can continue to track their movements. And we are still doing our vegetation monitoring. These are our staff out counting the shrubs, the shrub heights, and monitoring the impacts that the elk are having, and hopefully looking for changes, positive changes, by having fewer elk. So our proposal for the Ron Stewart Preserve at Rabbit Mountain is continue the management to reach our goal. As you saw, we're getting close at 81. We're still not at the 30 to 70, but we are getting close. And we are requesting hunting on tenant lease properties when a problem arises. So on to the Red Hill elk herd. So Red Hill itself is on Ohio Valley Ranch, and the herd has used Ohio Valley Ranch and the properties along North 36 Highway and east for years. We've known the elk have been out there, and we've always been very proud that this was one of the few herds that migrated from the Continental Divide all the way down to the plains. And again, this is one of our 2 highest areas of biodiversity. This is Highway 36 right here. Red Hill, the Red Hill natural area covers both parts of Ohio Valley Ranch and the Lucanen properties to the east of 36. Then you also see Table Mountain. Table Mountain is the federal Department of Commerce site, and that will come into play in a few minutes. So we've been monitoring these elk for a long time. We had a 10-year study that had collars on elk, and this shows the number of collars we tracked in the summers between 1997 and 2005. Very few elk down in this area. Now, since 2005, we've purchased a lot of these properties. They were private in 97 for sure. And so what we are seeing is that with the more open space that we have in this area, there's more refuge for the elk. This again is the federal land, Table Mountain up there on Nelson Road. So what happened is that these elk got comfortable down here in the summers. And some of them said, why do I need to migrate the 25 miles up to past peak to peak when I might have everything I need right here? So we added more collars in 2017, and this shows where the elk were in the summer. So now we're just focusing on the summer where the elk are starting to stay low. You can see there were elk all the way over here. This is Loggerman Preserve. The big thing here is our Imel property, which is a leased property. Table Mountain is red in the middle. Again, with these new acquisitions that fill in basically the blank spaces between our Platte, Centennial, and Wolf Run properties here. So you've got elk on Heil and then all the way in between. So in the summer of 2018, we saw a marked increase in the number of elk that were down here in the summer. And then again, in the summer of 2019, even more elk. And then this is a composite. This is summer and winter collar data from April 2017 through May 2019. And basically what happens is you can see they really like the new open space that we purchased, and they love Table Mountain. So this shows the summer counts. So in the summer of 2018, there were about 40, 45. In the summer of 2019, we had a high count of 110, a low of say 75 there. And then in the summer of 2020, it was back up again over 90. So it doubled in this 3-year time frame. And we, from our experience at Ron Stewart Preserve, we know that if the elk get comfortable there and they find all they need, their populations can grow pretty significantly rather quickly. So our parks and open space issues are, we do have high biodiversity at risk in the Red Hill area. And then we do also have the tenant issues. So this is a picture of one of the bales of hay on the Imel agricultural lease. And the elk found it and said, hey, this is pretty good lunch spot. And what the issue is the tenants can't hunt. We don't allow our tenants to hunt on leased open space, and they needed special permission to allow any sort of hazing. So in our Red Hill management plan, we put in there that we would work with parks and open space certified hunters on open space property that has a tenant. And if they were having elk issues, they would contact us, contact CPW. We would have a look, and then we would find certified hunters to head out and help haze the elk off the tenant's land and using their legally hunting methods. The Red Hill elk herd also crosses 36 pretty regularly, and that's what you see here. There were numbers of accidents up on Highway 36. So again, keeping the elk herd at a reasonable number is important for public safety. So our elk management was a limited hunting on closed parks and open space properties. So they were on Heil Valley Ranch, but not in the areas that are open to hiking. It was over the ridge. We had good safety boundaries set up. And then it was also on properties east of 36 where there is no public access. It was a short season from August 15th through October 31st. And it was shorter because we're really targeting those summer elk. We only allowed short range weapons because there are houses out in that area in closer proximity than say near Ron Stewart Preserve. They had strict proficiency testing and training, and we had very clearly marked safety boundaries. And then we did coordinate special management with tenants. And we had one tenant in particular who had the largest elk problem. And we did send some of our hunters over there, and at least one was able to harvest an elk on that. In setting up this plan, we worked with CPW, and they expanded the subunit boundaries. So this was the original one around Ron Stewart Preserve. They expanded it south to Niwot Road, and they used our Wapiti Trail on Heil Valley Ranch as the western boundary. So that allows hunters with that subunit tag to work on all of the private and county open space areas in that part of the subunit. This just shows a little closer up of the subunit boundary. So this year we had a total of 37 participants. They harvested 13 elk, and that was a 35% harvest rate. Joe Padilla worked with neighbors who were having game issues, and they were able to issue game damage tags, and of those tags, 5 elk were harvested. So again, for that whole larger subunit, a total of 70 elk were harvested. Before we did this, we had neighbor meetings, and then we monitored. We certainly had places for people to call if they had issues with hunting or elk, and we had very few calls. And I think people were pleasantly surprised at how unobtrusive the elk management was in that area. So counts after 1 year, well, we're doing summer counts up there, and we haven't hit summer yet, but our winter count was 370. And if you want to know what 370 elk look like, this is on Table Mountain. It's a lot of elk. Oops, I didn't want to hit it again, sorry. So our next steps, we have a new hunt coordinator. Many of you will remember Jenny Dalton. She found a job out in Oregon. So our new hunt coordinator will be starting next week. His name is Jonathan DaCosta. We will continue to work with the Department of Commerce, like that video was taken on Table Mountain with Department of Commerce staff. We also worked this past year and will continue to work with City of Boulder because there are a couple of open space properties adjacent to where we are managing elk. And we want to make sure that our elk just don't move over to City of Boulder's property. So far, that has not happened. We're continuing to monitor with radio collars and counts, and we are continuing to monitor damages by neighbors. And then very, very long-term is the CDOT overpass that would be a wonderful addition to North Highway 36 to allow large game like this to safely cross and reduce the risk of collisions with cars. And that is my presentation. I am open to questions now.
Hey, Therese, before you start, please, we have a chair point of order. And hey, Janet, do you want to make a statement for the record? Janet George.
Yeah, I'll just make the statement in full disclosure that I was involved with the Rabbit Mountain Ron Stewart writing when I worked with Colorado Parks and Wildlife before I retired. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago. So I've got some background.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Hey, in consultation with the county attorney, I'm just going to read a statement for the record, and that's that we've asked Janet to participate and vote in the conversation tonight because the commissioners, they will appoint people to POSAC because they have interest and or special expertise in the areas within the purview of the commission. And so if we would exclude her this evening, we'd miss out on her expertise. So as my understanding from the county attorney that as chair, I have the right to ask and would welcome Janet's participation. So with that, we'll go into the questions. And I just have one comment, and then Jen Archuleta, I'll throw it to you because I think Jen and I have, we should probably be by now be elk experts. But this, as Yogi Berra would say, this to me is sort of deja vu all over again. What I'm concerned about is sort of a policy issue, and that is sort of the bigger issue that we're now, if you start looking at where we're going hunting, we're starting to go out. We've gone from Rabbit Mountain, now it's expanding, we're going to expand again. So do we allow hunting on the open space? And obviously the answer to that is yes. So what's the policy on hunting on the open space? And do we have that sort of engraved somewhere? I'm concerned that the farmers, right? I think we have to hang on to every farmer we got and love them to death. And I think if the elk are doing damage, whether it's hazing, calling in the Royal Air Force, I'm sort of the opinion that it's what do the least harm, be a good neighbor should be the POSAC sort of overall writing goal. But I am concerned that we're going down a road where, and this is where I would ask CPW to think and consider this, is that this is to me going on now 4 or 5 years. There needs to be some kind of philosophy or a statement. I understand, and it's a sensitive subject, obviously, with the recent events in Boulder when you start talking about guns on the open space. But I think there needs to be more of a plan that we always sort of go to the guns or we go to hunting fairly quickly. So I'm concerned about how it's expanding a little bit. So that's not a question, that's just a Jim, and I'll shut my mouth with that and I'll turn it to Jen. Jen, would you have any questions?
Yeah, my concern is sort of along the lines is what you have with respect to the hunting policy. It just seems like when we started this, we sort of had the goal of not continuously hunting. And it just sort of seems like we are going to just keep doing it and expanding it. And I get it, we've got an elk problem, but I just don't know when it's going to end. It just seems like they just move. My other concern is something, I don't know if y'all remember when neighbors around the area came with huge concerns about hunting by where they live. Someone I remember brought his kid and was really concerned about his kid getting picked off by a rogue bullet. And I know that we talk about, these professional hunters and these, training and marksmanship and all these things, but it is a concern of mine still that we're hunting closer and closer to where people live. And I just feel like we still haven't really talked about other options with respect to hazing, like non-lethal hazing. Like, do we get volunteer squads who go out and haze people out of there, or do we, do we get dogs? I mean, I don't really know how we get to an end point of hunting. So that's sort of my concern.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Paula Fitzgerald, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. I think the last time, if I'm remembering correctly, the last time we talked about this last year, the Red Hill property, well, I should say the Department of Commerce area was excluded. And I don't recall if they were not interested in cooperating with the county, if the county didn't ask if they wanted to be part of it, and also the status of that right now. Are they all of a sudden on board and wanting to participate in this issue, or what? Teresa?
Sure. So the Department of Commerce, their representatives, they have 2 employees that have been working with us quite closely. Like I said, they've been coming to our planning meetings. They have participated in accounts. They know that it's an issue, and they've been working with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which is one of the groups they need to work with. The problem is it's the federal government, and it takes a long time for them to get any sort of approval. Joe, do you want to add anything else that you might, your conversations with Ken with the Department of Commerce? He's been optimistic, but what would you say, Joe?
Yeah, so I would say you're
Joe,
right
would
on
you-
there.
Hey, Joe, excuse me a second. Sorry to interrupt, Jim Krug, Chair. Would you just go ahead and for the record, identify yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Joe Padilla, District Wildlife Manager, Longmont South, for the Red Hill area. During the season, the 2 employees that Therese mentioned, they made it pretty clear that hunting was not going to be an option, in conjunction with our program. what they did do kind of on their own is they did hazing throughout the hunting season, because a big concern with us with trying to manage these elk, if we were creating a refuge by hunting on the property, if it was going to work the way it was designed to, these elk may move and move onto Table Mountain and just stay there. So they were actively hazing those elk on Table Mountain, just to get them to move, not necessarily pushing them back towards open space, but making them uncomfortable and not wanting to stay there. And Therese mentioned some of the harvests that we got on the adjacent private properties. That a good chunk of that was directly related to the pressure that we put on open space and on Table Mountain. Other licensed hunters were able to get to these elk on their own properties.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paula. Trace Baker?
Yeah, Trace Baker here. Got two questions, Trace. First of all, you use the term lethal hazing. Is that just a different way of saying hunting?
It is, well, it has two goals, yes. It is to get them to move, which is hazing, and then lethally is, yes, it is our management, which is hunting.
Thank you. Second question, and this is inspired by Jim's comment about, being too quick to go for the guns, and something Jen said is the county still doing non-lethal hazing where staff and volunteers go out and chase the elk around?
So we are not doing that anymore because we did it for a year and it was ineffective. And we tracked the elk when we would haze them with people, and we would move them off Rabbit Mountain itself, and they would go down to the CMEX property and beyond and be back right on Ron Stewart Preserve within 1 to 3 days. So we tried it, and with the consultation from CPW, they told us it does not change the elk's behavior. But what we are seeing is that when we are hunting them, their behavior is changing. Their home range is larger, and the numbers are down.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Trace. Stephen?
Yeah, I just wondered, what would the alternative to, I'll call it lethal hazing be? Are there any other breeding controls that are feasible? I think that was talked about at another point. And I just want to say that I live just east of Table Mountain, and I can see those elk in the evening all the time, in the early morning. And so I'm not out to discourage the current program, but I'm asking myself, I don't know if it's a long-term solution, but what are the other alternatives that are available?
So we looked at all kinds of alternatives when we started the program 4 years ago, and we looked at the ability to use birth control. We looked at the hazing issue, and again, there's no approved method of birth control for a wild elk herd, so that was not a possibility. And as I said, we tried the hazing. What we are finding is that the hunting is looking like it is very effective. We've gone from 375 down to 81 elk. So they're moving and they're reproducing less. So, and our goal is not to keep hunting forever. We are, like I said, we have a target. Once we hit that target, we're going to reduce our hunting and keep an eye on it so that it doesn't get out of control again.
Just to be clear, I'm not opposed to the hunting personally, just because I've seen up close and personal what can happen with the destruction from these elk. And I do have concerns for the biodiversity issues that you've raised. And I recall the discussions about birth control were not being available. I'm just sort of asking myself, well, what else is there?
Yeah. Hey, this is Jim Krug. Hey, Teresa, it might be a good idea. Maybe it was 2016, 2017, the packet for the POSAC meeting where there was a paragraph or two in each of those. Right?
Yeah.
It might be just as a point of order, or just as an action item. Maybe tomorrow when you get back at the ranch, you could send that out to the POSAC members? Because I thought that was a pretty good summary.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm not, I do recall when we've previously looked at this, that other methods have been explored. I'm also sensitive to the concerns that were raised about, how do we do? And the other question I have is, it seems like the numbers aren't coming down on the Red Hill herd as opposed to the other, the Ron Stewart. Is there any reason for that difference that you can tell?
Well, we really don't know if there's been any change in the summer herd at Red Hill because this was approved. The first time that we did any hunting was last August. And so we haven't done a summer count yet. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Tony Lewis, please.
Thanks, Jim. Therese and maybe Joe, a couple questions. Thanks for the presentation first. Have you guys ever considered allowing the tenants to be trained and certified as hunters for the lethal harvest on their properties? Because it just seems to me, if I were a tenant farmer and I saw elk damaging and I put a call into the county, I'd probably get somebody out there about 2 weeks later, notwithstanding good intent. It's just hard to get a certified hunter to that property in time. So I'm just curious if that's ever been considered.
Well, when we first started this program, it was very new. Most, hunting on open space, it is written into our large property management plans because the thought was out there 20 years ago that we may need this. When we started implementing it and saw the elk issues, 5 years ago, we still didn't want to open it wide. And there's a lot of concern, how do you assure that the tenants meet your proficiency criteria? What kind of weapons are they using? So we just haven't really opened that door yet, but we have been very responsive. And Joe, how about if you pipe in on how fast we were able to get certified hunters out on the tenants' properties? And we are, Joe, also, why don't you talk about your work with the tenants to help protect their agricultural products?
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Padilla, CPW. So when we had the main property we were working with last summer was the IMO property. And it was very quick. So as we progressed through the hunting season on the Red Hill properties, we were getting hunters who were unsuccessful. They just didn't get their elk. So we had an entire pool of hunters that we knew had a license, had already gone through our proficiency trainings and tests and the orientations. So they were ready to go. They just weren't successful on their week. As we got calls on IMO, the hunt coordinator, Jenny, and I, we had this list and we started trying to figure out who were going to be our hunters. And we even looked at if there was interest. Obviously they were unsuccessful. So we had a lot of interest in the second opportunity on IMO if it was to come up. So when the tenant there either called Jenny or I in turn went to Jenny and just asked if we had a hunter that could get out there because the elk are there. We could usually get somebody out there within a day. It wasn't a matter of weeks. It was oftentimes a matter of hours. There were a few times where we could even use hunters that were currently hunting on Red Hill and just sent them over to the property. So from that end, it was pretty quick. And then just, there's a lot of things that go on before we get to hunting. I'll use private property as an example, but we being CPW follow the same kind of procedure when we're assessing a damage type situation with a private landowner. We usually get a phone call causing damage to fill in the blank. If we're talking elk, we can say a haystack or field or fences. At that point, we go out, we assess the damage, and from there we can we have to do things that are non-lethal to start. We will never issue a game damage license and just jump to that. there are hoops that by state law, a landowner has to follow to try to mitigate damage on their own. And we help them with that by giving them hazing tools such as pyrotechnics is one of the main things we use. We also have panels that they can lean against haystacks that essentially take that haystack away because the elk can't get in there to the hay. And in some cases, we've even done stackyard fencing. We took one haystack that was getting hit tremendously on the north side of Table Mountain, just off of Nelson Road. And that solved their problem dramatically this past year. At that point, again, dealing with a private landowner, we do all of these. If we still have elk on the property, then this is where we look at trying to disperse those elk through hunting licenses. So we'll issue a voucher to the landowner. They then choose a hunter that they trust on there. A lot of times they're not even using this license. They're giving it to somebody they trust. They may not hunt. The hunter then goes out there and tries. Now, the act of hunting, we assume hunting, go back to those numbers. We're successful a third of the time, maybe at best. And it's not necessarily that harvest. It does help, but a lot of times it's just the pressure. Even an unsuccessful hunt can be a very good hazing event for elk, and they remember that. So, you look at the numbers and how they've dropped. Those haven't all been harvested. They learn over time as they get harvested, and that's kind of where you get this this benefit. And it also helps our hazing techniques with the pyros, because then they can't tell the difference between a gunshot and a firecracker going off. So we get.
No, I'm gonna hold you to time. Tony, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, and thank you, Joe. Two questions, or one other quick question: is CPW doing the reimbursement on county property for elk damage, or is that the county's responsibility?
The county has never requested any reimbursement, but some
No,
of
for
our
the private and for the tenant, yeah.
Yeah, so some of our tenants have gotten reimbursement for elk damage.
And that's by the county.
No, it's by CPW.
That's what I was asking. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then last, I really appreciate it. It was a brief mention, but thinking about an overpass on 36, as somebody who drives 36 a lot and is dodging elk and seeing people hit them and die, both the elk and the people, I'm just wondering, with the massive inflow of federal funds coming to CPW this year, if there's a way of Board of Commissioners making a request for CPW to help fund the overpass, because I think if we wait for CDOT, we'll all be long gone from this panel for sure, and probably from our jobs in POSAC. So the federal money coming into CPW is quite massive and could be used for one-time projects. And would like to encourage Parks and Open Space to talk to the commissioners and make a stab at that money. I think it might be worthwhile.
Good. Well, that's an excellent suggestion.
Thank you, Tony. Janet George, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I do actually. Thank you. So I just want to say my hat's off to staff and in partnership with CPW in putting together the Elk Management. I think Boulder County's program is a model. And as the data shows on Rabbit Mountain, Ron Stewart Preserve, you have brought it down from over 300 animals to almost down to objective. So again, hats off to you. Elk are large mobile herd animals that congregate in big groups, so they can have a big impact on agriculture. And I'm glad to see that what you're proposing will keep another tool in the box for the agricultural tenants to be able to use. And I guess I do have one question. Now that you're nearing objective, and maybe even in next year might be at objective, depending on how migratory the herd is, has there been any population modeling done to project, how long it would stay objective or how to maintain the elk down there at numbers objective and distribution objective? And it might be a question for CPW as well about the modeling.
Yeah, I think that it is a question for CPW, and large mammal biologist position was vacated and I believe is going to be filled in May. And I think that that will be a task for that new person. So we'll keep that on the list.
Yep.
I see Jason Deutsch here as well as Joe and Ben. So all of us will keep that on our list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. Ann Overchain.
Yes, hi. Thanks for the great work and the really helpful and informative presentation. I had one comment and one question on page 5 of the packet. It looks like the 30-70 ratio is reversed. So when I was reading it, that was going to be a question, but you cleared that up in the presentation. So I don't know if that needs to be updated. And then, 2 points. I agree with Tony and his recommendation on the overpass. Pre-COVID, I commute from Lyons to Boulder. I even have notes in my phone when I would see the herd in the early mornings. And I can tell you it's, as you all know, it's increased exponentially. And I've stopped on the road for about 10 minutes at a time, 5:30 in the morning, to let them all pass. So I think my question to Joe, he didn't quite finish, but is there a way to, if the elk don't know the difference between guns and pyro, if you were calling it pyros, I don't know if I have the term right, could we ramp up more, like do more of that hazing with pyros to help deter them and increase or ramp up the hazing on that side? I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. So, you think, well, I think they have to go hand in hand, honestly, to get, because then they get used to it. They'll get used to the loud noise, and it's just a loud noise. And those pyrotechnics, they really lose their effectiveness if that's all that's used, and it's used over and over again. They acclimate to that.
And we're trying to encourage them to continue to migrate to higher elevations, right? That's the ultimate goal, just to be clear, to go back to their normal patterns and not stay comfortable.
Correct.
And continue to disperse in the east part of the county.
Yep, that's exactly correct.
Okay.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Heather, have you joined us? No. Okay. I think we've got everybody at this time. Let's, do we have any
Jim?
online? Sorry?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Given that the numbers of successful bagging, tagging are kind of lower, where are those elk going? I mean, we have the hunt, they're not successful, but our numbers have gone down. Clearly those elk are going somewhere because we're not killing them all. So where are they going?
So I would say that some of them are heading up into Larimer County where we want them, but they are also being less reproductive successful, having less success with reproduction. A lot of the growth was just, they didn't have anything stopping their reproduction. And there was a lot of calves out there every year. So I think that's part of it as well.
I had one more question, if that's all right, Jim.
Sure.
So for the hunters that are unsuccessful in their week that they have a tag, are they eligible to get a second week if you need more hunters, or is it just 1 week during the hunting season?
When we have had someone drop out or someone successfully harvest on a different area and they could no longer use their tag, we have refilled with those hunters. And then we also sometimes put them in contact with private landowners. If a private landowner is interested in having someone hunt, we've got the names. Joe does a lot of that, so does Ben.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good. At this time, do we have any online public comments? Nick, V? Okay. Based on that, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion.
Well, this is Paula Fitzgerald. I will move that that we approve to the Boulder County Commissioners the Ron Stewart Preserve and Rabbit Mountain Elk Management Plan amendment as described.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Jim, I'm wondering if we could add a addendum to make it the recommendation of POSAC for the commissioners to approach CPW to look for funding for an overpass on Highway 36. So it's not left just to staff, but that POSAC actually weighs in on that.
Okay. Is there a second to that addendum to the amendment?
I'll second that.
All righty. So to understand the motion correctly is to approve the management plan along with an addendum encouraging the commissioners to seek funding for the overpass on US 36. Is that correct?
Yes, from CPW probably needs to be.
From CPW, yes, CPW. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Let the record show the motion has been passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you to CPW and all those who came out tonight. Appreciate it on this issue. Next item of business, we have Mac. He's going to talk to us about some fish.
All right, one moment while I get this fired up.
All right.
Let's see, show me a pen. There we go. Okay. Matt Kobza, wildlife biologist with Boulder County Parks and Open Space. So we're going to transition to a talk that's a little bit different in its scope and scale. And thank you all for giving me a chance to present some of this interesting work we've been doing with students and other folks in the county. So I'm going to describe today as what we're calling the Northern Redbelly Dace Recovery Project. Before I get into the fish and what the fish is all about, I just really want to highlight, I think one of the best things about this project is the people involved in the project and how this project is being done. And I need to call out Ocean First Institute, a nonprofit in the city of Boulder, Innovation Center, Lions Senior Middle High School in the St. Vrain Valley School District, who are really close partners in doing this with us, as well as Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who is a funder and a collaborator on this project. I also have to call out Boulder County Parks and Open Space Foundation, who have been very generous in helping fund some really cool aspects of this work and really making this go. There are some other people in this image, some logos from different agencies, including CU Boulder. We actually have 4 Masters of the Environment capstone students from CU Boulder who are working on this project through Ocean First Institute. And other partners in this, we haven't engaged directly yet, but they've offered support in kind or technical, including the Forest Service, Left Hand Watershed Center, CSU, Trout Unlimited, and Fish and Wildlife Service. So let me tell you a bit about this neat fish. So the Northern Redbelly Dace is a native minnow species that was very common in almost all streams in the Front Range of Colorado. It has since over many years of stream modification on our little streams and rivers, lost its primary habitat, which are backwater channels. Okay, so if you're familiar with how rivers wiggle and they produce oxbow ponds and lakes, or even how beavers dam up little rivers and create flooded conditions that create also ponding around rivers, well, these fish would have been living in those kinds of environments. And the way that rivers now exist, a lot of those backwater habitats are kind of lost because we kind of treat our rivers a little bit like pipes. And so the channelization and, making rivers straight. However, Boulder County actually has a lot of small ponds, big ponds on our open space properties that do kind of mock this native habitat for this species. And after the flood, we actually saw some of these new habitats open up, which I'm going to talk about. The fish itself is only 2 or 3.5 inches long. I know I make it look enormous here. That's for dramatic effect. And, minnow is a native, Colorado species. It is a tier 1 species of raised conservation need by CPW standards. It is a species of special concern in the Boulder County Comprehensive Plan. And so it's an animal that we have identified needing conservation and recovery. And so we've endeavored to partner with the local school systems for the goal of raising these fish in the classroom and releasing them back to parks and open space properties that have the right habitat, such as Webster Pond at Pella Crossing. Overall, this achieves, a number of goals in our mission statements, but also it really is a high power conservation tool. And it achieves a lot more using students and partners than we could do alone. It also has not only a conservation component, it has an education and outreach component. I'm working with Deborah Price, who's in our education and outreach section at Open Space. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the education component ties into this. So let me get into a little bit about what we're doing in this project. So after the flood, obviously a lot of things happened to open space in the county, but among those things that happened was flooding at Pella Crossing. So as the water went across Pella Crossing, which is near Hygiene, probably one of our most popular parks, Webster Pond, which is in the image here, I don't think I can point it out to you. Maybe I can. Can I do just a mouse? Maybe you can see my mouse. Webster Pond is here. So after the flood, there was sediment that was pushed into this stream or into this pond, Webster Pond. So sediment was eroded into Webster Pond. And so one of the options we had was to not rebuild Webster Pond as a former gravel mining pit, which was a fishing pond, but rather turn it into a sort of a wetland, shallow wetland habitat that we can release native fish into, but also it provides habitat for a variety of species. So our plant ecologists and a lot of other staffs on open space went to work planning to regrade. There was a huge effort of getting volunteers and all kinds of staff out there to plant wetland plugs and really make Webster Pond a very beautiful habitat. If you haven't been out there to see it, take a look. It's really turned into a marvelous habitat. Part of that required us to deal with some beavers that were living in Webster Pond. And they like to block the drain pipe that keeps the lake from getting too deep, which we need to do for the native fish and other things, and not to drown the plants that we planted out there. So we went through a process of actually relocating those beaver up to Caribou Ranch open space. So it was part of the preparation to get the pond ready. We already have a placard out there that describes what we're trying to do at the site, including releasing the Redbelly Dace at some point. And that point is now. And let me get into the story about the people and what we had to, what we went through to start the program and get things going. I mean, the flood began the conversation, but the school and the teachers who were receptive to this idea were really the stars of this, and the students who wanted to get involved in this. And so that some of the teachers and staff from like the Innovation Center, which is a facility in the St. Green Valley School District and Lyon Senior Middle High School, we went out to Alamosa, to this place you may have never heard of, the Colorado Native Aquatic Species Restoration Facility, where they keep some of the last native threatened species alive and propagated, including boreal toads and red-bellied dace. So we went there to learn how can we do this in the classrooms with students. And CPW and the staff there were amazing partners, and they showed us how we could do this. And we came away knowing that we could do this. And so we went to the classrooms, we set up the tanks, we worked with the kids that are in the background in this image, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Boyd Wright, native aquatic species biologist in the middle there, myself and my wife on the left, and teachers, staff on the right. And we had all the things, all the fish in the classrooms. We had them ready to go, ready to get them breeding and making little fish. And then unfortunately COVID. And so we had to take all those tanks and all those supplies and everything, and we actually moved them into, well, my basement. And Mickey is the Ocean First Institute director. And so we took over the care and responsibility of raising these fish that had started to be bred in the classrooms in our home for the entire duration of last year, through March through September. And we set these things up. But I tell you, we learned a lot about the fish, and it was probably a good thing because there was a lot. This is new. No one's really raised fish like this outside of that native aquatic species restoration facility. I have a couple videos I'm going to show you. Watch your volumes. They tend to be a little loud. I hope they're not that loud, but this is a little video showing the fish. So, and I did the wrong thing. Okay, let me try that again. So these are the fish. These are the Redbelly Dace. This was not long after we established them in the tank. The males have red bellies and the females don't. And I'm going to go into this in detail, but their behavior means they're ready to spawn. And they really love their live plants. There are a lot of things to learn about this animals to make sure they're happy and healthy and ready to spawn. And I have a few more better videos on that. But let me it's kind of geeking out on the fish, but this is neat. This is something the students are actually doing themselves now. And it includes, once those fish spawn, they lay little eggs on these black horsehair mats. It's like algae, like green algae they would lay their eggs on in nature. And then we take those eggs, we wash them in formaldehyde, make sure they don't get fungus on them. And then they start to grow into little fry that lay on the bottom of the tank, and they don't move except their mouths. They just lay on the bottom of the tank and they're just hanging out for a few days until they get strong enough to swim up and become juvenile fish. And through this process, the fish grow up, they get to be this size, half of an inch, and hundreds of these this side in our basement, keeping them healthy, keeping them going. We had to do water chemistry a lot. We raised fish on the right. There's little things that we set up were brine shrimp, sea monkeys that we raised in our home. That's what they feed. They're very, very picky. You have to feed them this live food every day. And we also had a Periscope streaming site that we set up for the students. We were still conducting outreach with the school district, with students in the classroom. Classes had been set up specifically to raise these fish and have learning STEM goals around these fish. So we were beaming in video and connecting with the students as much as we possibly could to keep them engaged. I later learned that students were actually watching these video feeds and they were using these in the classroom, and I hear about it all the time now. So this is how we stayed engaged with the classrooms, with the students during COVID, was by live video feed. So this is a longer video. It kind of shows the whole story of what we did and a little bit better pictures of what happened and why we did it. Today in Rooney's Pond, which is a pond outside of Lyons. One of the students on the right there, her father, at his property, he offered his pond because it was ready last year to release the fish in. So she and other students in the program were able to release them there. We found them there this spring. We didn't know if they would survive. They're doing good. And that was a really good sign. We didn't know that would happen. That, you know, having the students, this is when we did the final release, just having the students out there with us in the pond, able to do this, you know, finally doing the release. It was just a big day. It felt really good. And these are the same students that continue to work on the project, and they stick with it. Even though, you know, last year was kind of a bust, they're still doing it. Those students can now be, some of them are seniors, and they're still sticking with it. As of this point, we have the tanks back in the classroom. We have fish in the classroom. The state has helped us get everything up and running. And we have a 3-year plan or more. We think this can go on for some time with maybe a different species if we need to. But release into Webster Pond, that's our plan this year. The pond is ready to receive these animals. It's in great shape. And we're thinking when we do release the next batch of these northern red-bellied dace into the Webster Pond, the students in the school district have already been visiting the site, and they're going to monitor the fish in the habitat, and it's going to be part of their STEM curriculum and you know, studying ecology, environmental resources, and being stewards of the environment. We also have another opportunity at a nearby pond called Hep Pond. It's a private pond, another private-public partnership that we can work with to potentially have another really nice backwater area right on the creek to put these fish into. CPW has already been out there, and we've been looking at this site to see how we can make it better for these fish. Backwater habitats are very, very rare in almost anywhere in the Front Range, but in the same range. So this would be a natural backwater habitat. The other couple things that we're doing is expanding outreach and education in this. We're running field trips with the students in the field, especially now that we have lesser restrictions due to COVID. We can actually do things now with the students in the field, socially distanced and being careful, wearing masks. We also have education materials being produced by students and staff, such as this line drawing over here, Northern Red-bellied Dace. They use this in their curriculum and their STEM standards. There's several courses at the Innovation Center that are running around this program. So Deborah Price and Mickey McComb-Kobza with Ocean First are working with them and other people. There's also quite a bit of outreach that's ongoing, such as, you know, social media outlets and the website for the school district, messaging what the students are doing and what we're trying to do. And also we're exposing the students to new opportunities, you know, open space benefits by these conservation values, by getting a lost native threatened species back into our open space, but also we're providing really cutting edge education opportunities for these students in the local school district. We're going to do some environmental DNA sampling. We're going to work on an assay kit, it's called, for these days, working with the state to be able to track them without catching them. All you have to do is capture their DNA. And there's different ways of using that information, and then also doing tagging and tracking studies on not just particularly the red-bellied dace, but we've almost completed 2 new fish passage projects on the St. Vrain Creek, if you aren't aware. And so some of these students are getting involved in tagging and tracking our fish to do some monitoring on these fish passages. And so again, we're working with Fish and Wildlife Service, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and others, CU, CSU, and we're giving high school students, some really interesting opportunities to meet professors, to think about college and to think about their careers. But in the end of the day, no matter what they do have great exposure to being environmental stewards of their, of the St. Vrain Creek in their backyard. So that is it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Mac.
Yeah.
Hey, Mac, thanks for coming out tonight. As this is a information only item, I won't go through roll call, just open it up to POSAC members if they have any questions for Mac.
This is Paula Fitzgerald. I don't have a question, but I just want to applaud you, Mac. I think you've gone well above the call of duty, you and your wife both, for the 24/7 care you've provided. And this not only great conservation, but I expect that you're going to have some fishery biologists graduating from this high school class. I mean, this is a huge opportunity, and I can't thank you enough for the innovation of this. It's great.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Any others?
Trace Baker here. Great project, great presentation, Mac. Thank you. You mentioned in your packet information that you trained high school students in applied conservation biology. Was there was a curriculum developed, and if so, by whom? And who did the presentation of that curriculum?
I'm probably overstating right now the advancement of the curriculum. I think what's happening is this is an ongoing project to increase that. The students are learning, applied conservation. They're doing, they're doing aquaculture in the classroom of a rare and threatened species. And they're actually going out and monitoring habitats where we're going to release these animals. And they're learning why they're doing that. And they're also working with government agencies. That's pretty applied conservation. But as far as that curriculum development, I think the Parks and Open Space Foundation has very generously gave us a donation to have a project coordinator directly working with the schools to help with curriculum. But we also have Axel Reitzig and some other staff in the St. Vrain Valley who have been working with us to develop curriculum. They do have classrooms set up for this, and they do teach about these things. I focus on the biology and the restoration and all these other components. You would really have to get Mickey or Deborah on the line here to talk to them too about what's going on in the classroom exactly with the curriculum, or Axel even. And maybe I can bring them in another time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mac. Any others? Good. Okay. Thank you, Mac, again for coming out tonight, and appreciate all your good work, and keep it up.
Great work, Mac. Great presentation. Thank you.
You.
Next item up is the strategic plan update, and tonight's going to be the administration division and the education and outreach work group. And it looks like we have Judy and Pascal with us tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So, hey, whenever you're ready and you're all set up, please begin.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Good evening, POSAC members. I'm Tina Nielsen, here to introduce tonight's strategic plan presentation. The Parks and Open Space Department has been engaged in an internal strategic planning process that started in 2019, and you got an overview of that from Ernst Strenga at your January meeting, which kind of gave you an idea of how this framework will inform the department's work going forward. Throughout the remainder of this year, staff from each of our 22 work groups will be presenting an overview of their strategic plan and their objectives. Tonight, you'll be hearing from Judy Dvorak, who's the manager of the administration division, and Pascal Fried, who's a supervisor of the education and outreach work group. So you've seen this before, but just as a reminder, the pyramid just depicts our strategic plan framework. And it sets out the desired future conditions, or DFC, which is the North Star that each group is aiming for over the long term. The goals lay out more detail about what needs to happen in order to reach the DFCs. Strategies are yet more granular, kind of outlining how and when things happen, and objectives are the concrete actions for this year. The objectives are SMART, so I'm sure you're familiar with this acronym. This framework is designed to help each work group find the right balance of work and allocating their time and resources to move them forward and create accountability as they plan out their year. So with that, I will now turn it over to Judy and Pascal, who will be presenting for their work groups.
Good evening, Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee. I'm Judy Dvorak, Administrative Division Manager. Thank you for your interest in our 2021 strategic plan. I'm here this evening to provide you with a brief update on our progress. Our first goal is to create and implement standard business practices. We consider this work as foundational for our department. Objective 1.1 is to develop and enhance our online product, NeoGov, specifically by building out several employee forms which are currently in use but located in various locations. Our vision is to provide one-stop shopping for each and every member of our POS team. This year, we will complete at least 3 forms in our NeoGov eForms module. Objective 1.2 is to integrate all onboard and offboard forms and tasks in NeoGov. Goal 2 is to be proactive and not reactive in addressing the best practices to deliver excellent customer service. Objective 2.1 is to continue to develop our Oracle reporting features. This will be accomplished through a collaborative effort with the Oracle Programming Office and the Office of Financial Management. Objective 2.2 is to automate our processes through the use of technology. We will bring an online payment platform to parks and open space. This online payment platform will enable us to take credit card payments for our rental house properties, reserving picnic shelters, and processing payment for CSU online classes. Goal 3 is to provide opportunities for productive learning and working together. Objective 3.1 is to use Teams to provide and record online training sessions. Objective 3.2 is to create and to share how-to quick guides to provide step-by-step training. Objective 3.3 is to collaborate and partner with Boulder County's workforce program to provide new opportunities which increase our community connections. This objective includes creating at least one intern opportunity within our admin division. At this point in time, I'd like to thank you for your interest in our Administrative Division Strategic Plan. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Are we gonna break the 2 presentations up or have both? And then questions?
Yeah, Trace Baker, one question for Judy. You mentioned on your last slide hiring one intern position. What would that person be doing?
So we actually are in the process of training and working with that intern. We've created a good established network with our workforce, and we've just onboarded about 5 weeks ago a administrative personnel specialist. And she's been supporting and helping me to build out these NeoGov modules. She's doing fabulous, and she's also starting to work with our HR payroll specialists. Both of us have been, our HR payroll specialist and myself have been tag teaming to roll out this new platform. So we've been putting in some extra hours, and the intern seeks this opportunity to get her foot in the door with some new technology, as well as to be integrated into Boulder County's workforce programs. So she's been helping us build these forms and create the platforms for this.
Thank you, Judy.
Yes.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you, Judy. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
And now we'll go to Pascal. Are you there?
You're on mute, Pascal.
My apologies. Okay. So I need to start my video. Let's see it. I'm sorry, I'm going to need help. I cannot find the green box.
Hi,
Can you
Pascal.
help me?
Oh, hi, Pascal. It's Judy. If you hover down towards the bottom of your screen, you should see the share screen.
just have one. Yeah. I am seeing the small. Okay, so I'm back. I just see everybody, but I do not see any toolbar. I just see my regular Word, PowerPoint, my Microsoft.
Pascal, if you want, I just pulled your presentation off the hard drive. Do you want me to just share mine?
Yes.
All right,
very
awesome.
much.
Yeah, no worries.
Appreciate it. Sorry, guys. We practiced, but I cannot find that green button. Okay, thank you.
Judy, you get the teamwork award tonight.
Woohoo.
Okay. I can see it. Everybody good?
It doesn't seem to be playing through.
All right. I have the share screen button now.
Okay, let me stop sharing and see if you can pick up then.
Okay.
So you just needed that little prompt, right?
Well, no, now it's gone. It's bizarre. I don't have it any longer.
Okay. Hey, that's okay.
Through. I don't want to waste your time, so I can just do the presentation. I'm here. I don't need the pre-recorded. So Judy, if you can bring that up, and then I'll just cue you.
Yeah, just walk us through, Special.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you seeing it, Pascal?
Not yet.
Okay.
Pascal, it feels like your bandwidth may be slightly limited so that your audio comes through clearly. I'm going to suggest you turn off your camera to save some bandwidth while you give the audio presentation.
Sure.
Okay, Pascal, are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, so you can start from the beginning.
Okay.
And we will just, okay. Everybody knows I'm Pascal because we've had to wait for me all this time, but I am the supervisor of the Education and Outreach work team. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our goals as well as this year's objectives. Next slide, please. Before I start that, I just want to make sure we're all, aware of who our work group is. And we're composed of both paid staff and volunteer staff. As you can see, just purely by the numbers, we have a lot of volunteers who work with us. And my staff and I consider them part of the team because they're the ones who often are interfacing with the residents and the people visiting our parks more than 8 full-time, 6 seasonals, and some senior tax work-offs, can do in a year's time. The Education and Outreach team do both natural history and cultural history. So we have 3 small museums, but we're also leading the indoor-outdoor nature hikes. And we have the responsibility for the department's publication, including Images, which is our quarterly magazine, the property brochures, and flyers that you may see, interpretive signs in parks. Next slide, please. Our desired future condition is the community will connect with the natural, cultural, agricultural resources and values the importance of the county open space. And with that, we have 4 goals. Some of these goals we've had for over a decade and some are new. And I'm going to go through those in the next slide, but we have 4 only, and then some objectives for each for this coming year. Next slide, please. The first goal is to inform the public about the county's open space, the resources, management practices, and visitor opportunities. And that's very big. And I think we do that in many different ways, including the publication I mentioned, the programs that we present to the public, really depending on where we are and the audience that we're with, we try to really accent what people have in Boulder County, because not everyone really knows the natural and agricultural resources, but also we really, I think, take a lot of time to explain what we're doing on open space, not education, not outreach, of course, but everybody we work with to really steward our lands that are public lands for the residents as well as visitors. And then finally, opportunities that people can get involved. Objectives for this year really include the 3. I shortened them so they could also accompany a photograph, but they are SMART objectives if you look in your POSAC memo. And the first is to offer 20-minute talks to shelter reservation groups. It's not a mandatory, but it's an offer. And the reason we're doing that is because we have found that many groups that rent the shelter space are not your typical open space users. They tend to do this because they have a family coming in town, or they're celebrating a marriage or a graduation, and they just want to be outdoors. So it's an opportunity for us to really share information about that park, that ecosystem, what we're doing as far as management activities there. The second objective is to update all our kiosks, this is a photograph of the welcome panel, which is the top right panel that you would see when you go to one of our parks. So they are bilingual in both English and Spanish. And then finally, the third is we are working with the department sign team to create bilingual signage in our parks. It's over 4,000 signs, so it won't happen instantly, but we have started with our fishing regulations, our fishing parks, information about bait, etc. And we are moving slowly but surely through the parks and all the signs in our parks. Next slide, please. The second goal is to meet the interest of our diverse population. And our first objective for this year is to hold or to offer senior-only hikes. And the reason is not only is it in the United States and Boulder County an aging population, but we have found that a lot of seniors in Boulder County are new residents, and they've moved there from all different parts of the country to be with their grandchildren or their children and their grandchildren. So it's a nice group to really share what they've moved into, what the opportunities are here. And we have found that seniors, not all seniors, but many seniors really appreciate going on a senior-only hike. They don't feel rushed, or they feel that they can share experiences that maybe they couldn't if it were a family hike or more youth than just seniors. The next 2 objectives really go hand in hand. We are involved with a GoCo grant. This is our 3rd year, really sponsored by the City of Lafayette and Thorne Ecological Institute. And we are offering classroom and then field trips for preschoolers. And that's what the photo is. This is the indoor classroom part. And then after that, they would be going to Walden Ponds or maybe Bald Mountain. And we found that very successful because a lot of preschoolers are nervous about being in the great outdoors. They're more accustomed to maybe their backyard or a city park, but this sort of dips their toes into learning about owls, so they're ready to go on that hike. And then the second, maybe second graders by then have spent a little more time on field trips, a little bit more comfortable, and we're doing foothill ecology hikes at Hog Valley Ranch. Next slide, please. Our third is to meet the opportunities, offer opportunities to meet the interest of our diverse population. And there are 2 slides for this, but the first is we want to collaborate with El Paso Movement. This is an organization that we started a co-creation of programming for this group that's it's located in Longmont. And then the pandemic hit. So we were not able to really start off those programs. But this is an organization that is really about parents getting their kids ready for kindergarten. So it has a lot of parent and child, young child interaction, and they approached us. We were thrilled. And Deborah Price, whose name you heard earlier, was really ready to get going with some volunteers and do these programs. But we haven't been able to get back to that because we still are restricted on not doing youth programs in the outdoors, but hopefully that will be forthcoming. And they've been very patient with us. The second objective you can see is to upgrade the exhibits, or some of the exhibits at the Agricultural Heritage Center. So they will be not only bilingual, but they really are focused on the histories of the many different cultures that have lived on the land in Boulder County through time, and to highlight the different ways that everybody has succeeded because of that relationship with the land. Next slide, please. The third goal is that we evaluate the department's services and programs, not all of them, but many of them, and to hopefully, therefore, better meet the public's need. And, that's not only the county residents, but people who visit our parks. So objective 3.1 is that we do volunteer program evaluation surveys at the end of the year to find out, through all the different programs we're offering our volunteers, what worked, what'd you like, what was missing, what would make it better? Do you have ideas on how we can expand or change it? And this has been very fruitful for us. I think that's why we are so successful and have so many different volunteer programs. It's because staff ask that question all the time. Often it's in survey, but some groups do roundtables. They'll do a picnic lunch to really try to dig in. What can we do better? What can we do differently? And I think at this point, we're really trying to expand our programming to different kinds of volunteers as well. Objective 3.2 is our 5-year visitor study. And that is a system-wide at all our parks. It's an exit study. And Michelle Marati will present the findings of that study later on this year to you. But typically, it's not only what do people experience, but again, what would they like to see different, their suggestions, their frustrations in the parks that they were visiting. Next slide. And then finally, our fourth goal is our volunteers, to really meet the interest of our diverse community, to offer the programs that people may want to do with us on open space. 4.1 is to really spend some time and consult with other county departments who have larger Latinx volunteer pools, participation, and to really glean from them how they did that, how are they retaining those volunteers, because we'd like to expand what we have. We have some, but we definitely do not reflect the community at large, so we'd like to increase that. And then finally, the last one is to share our opportunities with our CRISP partners. I know Ernst was with you recently to talk to you about the CRISP initiative, and we have 6 to 8 partners. And I think part of the reason that some people do not volunteer with us is because they don't know what the opportunities are. So we're trying to reach out to our partners to help us just inform the Latinx community of the different volunteer opportunities we have, hoping that that alone will bring in some new interest. So with that, I'm ready to answer any questions you may have, or perhaps, if you have suggestions for me and my team, I'd love to hear them.
Thanks, Pascal. Hey, since this isn't a voting on again item, I'm not going to do roll call, just to open it up to anyone who has any questions for Pascal. Thank you, Pascal. I'll say this, I'll start. Thank you. I think it's hard with COVID. I've missed the annual fall picnic with the volunteers, and I'm sure it's difficult for everybody with COVID. So hats off to you guys for this year. So I'll throw it open to any other POSAC member. Any questions? Okay. Pascal, we'll let you off early tonight with that.
Yeah. And
thank you for coming out. And go ahead.
I just want to say happy National Volunteer Week. I appreciate the work that you do. I have been on advisory committees, and I know it's more than just a 3-hour meeting once a month. So thank
Sure.
you, and also happy Earth Day.
Thanks. Same to you. Back at you. Okay. The last item tonight's agenda, and it's the last time, unfortunately, I guess I get to say this, but live from Longmont, it's the grand finale of Eric Lane.
Thanks, Jim. I'm not sure I like the grand finale. Morbid finality to it. Well, happy Earth Day, everybody. I'm just going to go through my director's update and then have a few parting comments for y'all. First, just update you on Ohio Valley Ranch. As you know, we selected an aerial mulching contractor. They're starting to mobilize equipment at Heil, and helicopters may start flying as early as next week to start collecting hazard trees for mulch. And Parks has participated in 3 county open houses for neighbors and the community to learn more about the flood risks they might anticipate this summer. We've also awarded a contract to design and build sediment control structures on Heil to help slow any waters that we end up seeing sediment come down from rain events this summer. We've also just submitted, or will submit tomorrow, a grant to the Colorado Water Conservation Board for additional funds to cover mulching on high priority Forest Service lands that we're not able to use the other resources we have to put out mulch on. And if we can get this grant, which is about $500,000, it will help increase the effectiveness of the mulching on our properties, because it will hit some other high priority areas too. And then just as a reminder, we made a big push last week publicly to let everyone know that the south side of Heil, the Gear Canyon access, will remain closed until September 30th for safety and also speed of operations as we do the mulching and other restoration efforts. So that's just a quick update on Heil, so you're in the know of what's happening these days. And then in the sort of odds and end categories, I wanted to let you know that the board and also the city of Boulder approved the Rocky Mountain Greenway FLAP IGA, which codifies collaboration among Boulder and Jefferson counties and some cities on the construction of the trail crossings on Indiana Street and State Highway 128 to connect our trail networks to the Rocky Flats trail networks and extend the Rocky Mountain Greenway into the county and to the city of Boulder. Switching gears entirely, I think you're dimly aware, at least, that we've been working for many years to create a new ditch diversion structure just north of the office, actually across the street along the St. Vrain. It's called the Niwot Ditch Diversion Structure. And we met a milestone on April 1, and the new ditch diversion is delivering water to the agricultural users, which was a really important goal. And this creek passage component is still under construction. There's still the sort of in-stream passage that we're working on, and it's going to help endangered native fish like the Redbelly Dace move up and down the creek without being blocked by a dam, while still being able to divert water effectively to the farmers. And it also replaces a ditch diversion which has been deteriorating and was in need of replacement sometime in the very near future anyway. The open space, the Parks and Open Space Foundation has been making awards on a recent round, and I think what we'll probably do is, when we are finished with all the final selections, we'll send you a spreadsheet to know what projects in the department are getting funded. But we're really excited about the ag program getting $50,000 for the Boulder County bean storage project to help support the transition away from GE crops. And we're still working on finalizing the best location for the new storage shed, which I think will be very helpful. And then lastly, the community forest sort yard in Nederland will open next Wednesday, April 28th. So that's the update stuff. I wanted to provide a few brief party remarks. I wanted to let you know how much I've appreciated the opportunity to work with you, POSAC, both individually and collectively over the last several years. I really value the time and commitment that each of you have made to public service. And I also value the partnership that you have forged with the department so that we can advance the community's open space goals. I know that some issues are fun to learn about, like the Redbelly Dace. Others are more difficult to work through. And you've all volunteered to sit in the hot seat on a few thorny issues that our community continues to grapple with. And you've done so voluntarily. So as Pascal pointed out, it is National Volunteer Week. I want to thank you for your commitment to serve the community. And I want to express my sincerest appreciation for the opportunity to partner with you in shaping the future of Boulder County's open spaces. And I wish you all well, especially in your continued work for open space. So thank you. It's been a privilege to work with you.
Thanks, Eric. We wish you the best, and hopefully you won't be a complete stranger. And everybody in our paths will cross again. But most of all, wish you Godspeed and good health, and enjoy yourself. And I'll chime in with ask any other POSAC member if they want to make any comments.
Yeah, Trace Baker, Eric, I want to thank you so much for everything that you have done for the county, and especially for the staff that you've put together to help you and to act directly with the public and the other volunteers. So again, thank you.
Thanks, Trace. Appreciate it.
This is Paula Fitzgerald, and Eric, just wanted to give my thanks. You've really fostered a great collaborative relationship between the committee and staff, yourself. Getting us out onto the properties is not an easy thing to do. That's been hugely informative. I think your background, your experience has just, it's given us a lot of information that we desperately need to make decisions on behalf of the community. So anyway, good luck to you. I'm sure you have some wonderful thing that's up ahead. Hopefully you'll stay in touch and let us know what you're doing, but thanks so much for your work with the county.
Thank you, Paula. And to everybody who says, I hope we meet again, I sincerely hope, and I would put money on the fact that we will probably meet on an open space trail.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Hey, this is Jen Archuleta. Hey, Eric. I might be the only one who was on the transition from Ron Stewart to Eric Lane. Were you there, Jim? Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate how seamlessly you transitioned and how candid you are. I think it's really, really cool that you're so open about where the county can improve. And I have always appreciated your honesty and your transparency. And I really wish you the best of luck wherever you go. We'll miss you.
Hey, Jen, I'm glad you brought that up because, Eric, I don't know if you remember, the staff told you about the tradition that when the executive director leaves, they do a gift card to all the POSAC members to Starbucks for a year.
Yeah.
Did anybody in the staff tell you about that? It'll probably be tomorrow or before you leave next Wednesday. They'll hit you up about it.
I'm sure there's a hold on my budget someplace.
Yeah. I'll put my address in the comments for you.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Jen. Any other comments, and we'll shut her down for the night.
Thank you, Eric.
The next, thanks to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stephen.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Eric.
Hey, thanks to Nick and V and Renata for always trying to coordinate this thing is not the funnest thing. So thank you. And our next meeting is on, somebody help me, June 20.
May.
No, let's try May. I'm going to skip a month. Let's try May 29th. Is that right?
27.
27th, May 27th, Thursday night, May 27th. So everybody be safe, and we will see you at that time.
Great. Thank you.
We're on the trail. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Night all.
Good night.